Hello, everyone, and welcome to Founders Ascent. This week, we have a special behind-the-scenes discussion with Megan Goodwin about starting a podcast and our experiences, as well as hers, entering this space. As you may recall, last week, Megan was a guest and discussed her insights on marketing and branding. But prior to recording that episode, we actually had a meeting with her and discussed all our tips and tricks and secrets for creating an awesome podcast. So I hope you enjoy.
Interested. So you two are both studying accounting, is it? Or business or?
So I'm studying accounting and BJ is studying computer science with a minor in business analytics.
Okay. So hang on, particularly you though, doing accounting. I see the connection between computers and business analytics and podcasting and stuff like that. But that's quite a departure.
Accounting and doing a podcast. Yeah. So kind of the thought process is, I think accounting,
right? But
so the thought process is
you're always going to have a job, right? That's what you're thinking.
That's part of it. It was sort of to keep every door open and have as many possibilities as possible. But the goal is to, start my own company, join some sort of startup in the future, and just having a foundational understanding of how a business works monetarily speaking was kind of the goal there. But not only that,
so that's why you started doing podcasts, was to ask people about how they structure their businesses.
Yeah. So how we started this podcast to begin with was BJ and myself last year would have a bunch of conversations about startups because we both figured out that we had a mutual interest in that. And so we would spend hours each week having conversations about books that we were reading related to entrepreneurship, things we found online that we thought were really cool. And then one day BJ was like, hey, dude, we have these conversations so much, we should just put a camera and microphone in front of it and just see where it goes and post them. And I thought it was a great idea. And a year and a couple months later, we're here. So
yeah, but I'm really tell you something. Well, I don't know how much you see my profile, but I've done quite a lot of lecturing to different universities, just like guest lecturing and stuff like that. But
yeah,
I'm going to tell you something that so few students that I come across have the ability to kind of get up and do stuff, but also have that the spirit of just try, yeah. Because you know what, you got to start off like that, because by the time you get to my age, you're never going to just try. Whereas I'm very lucky I grew up in a kind of culture with my family that we do just try things, like and that's why exactly I've only just started a podcast myself. That's why I was like, haha, I'm going to ask you, because actually, these things are a little bit exposing to do things that you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And so few people do that. So I just wanted to say well done, because when I looked at your background, I was like, that's really interesting. It's not like you're a media student. It's not like you're a business. Mind you, now I know that BJ is doing business. It's a sort of bit more of a connection. But so yes, commend you. So what I was going to ask you about is, so do you put them on all platforms, right? So each time you do it, because what I'm doing is I'm putting it onto YouTube, and then I have to change things, and then I have to put it on Spotify. And then I've given up at doing something else at the moment because I just can't. It's just a bit too much.
Yeah. So the other platforms. So if you in your YouTube, in your Spotify for podcast account, there's a section that's in the settings called podcast availability. And so what you do in there is there's what's called an RSS feed. I'm not sure what it stands for, but that's what distributes it to all the other platforms simultaneously.
So you just hit a button.
So what you do is it has a number of links in like Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or like all these other podcasting platforms, right? And so you can hop over to their portal, create your account over there, and then just add the RSS feed. It's a link. You just add that link right there, verify that it's your podcast, and then so you upload it to Spotify and it will hit all those other platforms.
Yeah, but do you have to create a landing page for each of those platforms? No? Because on Spotify you kind of have to create a little bit of a profile page.
Yeah, so the profile page gets distributed with the episodes.
So that goes into your RSS feed, basically.
I believe so, if I remember correctly. If not, I just copy pasted the same description.
I know. I know it's not that much work, but it's,
Right.
you know, every stage. So at the moment when I have my thing, I have to change the file for, it doesn't matter. It's just all admin about something.
Right.
So do you find, in terms of your demographics, like, have you, given that you're doing data analytics, have you been looking into who watches it or listens to it and on what platforms? So what works best for you?
Yeah, so podcasts don't have amazing analytics. YouTube has phenomenal analytics, but like podcasts as a whole, I believe you can get a like paid RSS feed that will grab analytics from all the websites and do all this other stuff. But in terms of the since most of the other thing about all these podcasting platforms is that they're not particular like amazing for growth. What Spotify does is it shows what's already popular. Whereas YouTube and a lot of social media is much better about giving new creators a chance. And so most of our audience right now is on YouTube anyways. And so the YouTube analytics are sufficient for us right now, where we're not overly concerned about all the other podcasting platforms. That's just an additional exposure, and if you have a preference, you get to use your favorite.
Yeah, and so we had a guy on a couple weeks ago that was talking about, well, he has his own podcast as well. And what he was telling us, he's a lot further along than we are. And so basically, YouTube is what you go viral on in a way for your podcast specifically. And so that's what you want to do to grow as much as you can. And your retention is kind of on the other platforms. Like most people aren't going to log on to YouTube every week or however often you're posting your podcast, and they're not going to watch the whole thing on YouTube, generally speaking. They're going to watch the whole thing on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you know, because it's on the go, it's easier. They can listen to it in their car. They don't have to have their phone out, literally watching it on their computer or something like that. So your other podcast platforms, that's where you retain your audience. How you find them in the first place, generally speaking, is going to be on YouTube or some other social media platform. The guy that we had on was saying that his best way of finding people was between Twitter and LinkedIn. And so what we're trying to do is, if you've seen our YouTube, like you could check the YouTube Shorts area. We're posting like the shorts, like the 30-second to a minute clips of our podcast, and those are what are going to bring people into the podcast. Or you could post something on LinkedIn or Twitter that's maybe like a quote or something, or something that has to do with your brand or something that could pull them in.
Yeah.
Looking at your page so they could find your podcast later.
No, that's exactly what. So I've been doing like a teaser of like about 30-second teaser on LinkedIn that makes the kind of brand points for me. And then the idea is if they're interested, because everybody my age says, oh, but have you got it on Spotify? Because exactly, nobody really wants to watch it on YouTube.
No one's going to find it on Spotify is the thing.
Like, I know. I tried to search the other day.
Most listeners for podcasts are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Like you could look up the analytics, like what percentage of people that listen to podcasts are on what platforms, and it's like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like they're all there. But those are the people that are already kind of hooked on a channel. They're not on there to explore. They're on there to go back and click on their favorite person. I do that too. Like I only watch Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan. Like I don't explore podcasts on Spotify. I explore podcasts on YouTube. And the reason why I started watching those podcasts in the first place was because I was listening to a lot of Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan shorts on YouTube, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I like what they're saying. I went to the podcast and I enjoyed it. And so that's how, like, you're trying to convert the Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube people. Yeah, you're funneling them all in to hopefully Spotify and Apple Podcasts one day. That's the idea. Okay, she's frozen.
Now. So to go on. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wait, you're not frozen anymore. You're good.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's embarrassingly simple. So to go on, so at the moment I upload on YouTube, honestly, is like a storage device for me. And that's where so it's there, but it's unlisted. I've recently ticked the box of podcast, so I think mine now all goes on podcast. But how do I get it on YouTube? I do this tick a box to do it on YouTube Shorts because I've got these like trailer clips.
Yeah, so for posting the YouTube Shorts in your YouTube studio, there's a create button, and if you submit a clip that's less than
as long as it's less than a minute long, it should go directly to the shorts.
Yes. So
regardless of what like the dimensions of the video are, it'll go to the shorts.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
Why not?
And it should be noted that Google Podcasts is going away, and it's now becoming YouTube Podcasts. There's some restructuring in the company where you now can submit an RSS feed directly to YouTube. And
okay.
It will
so I could upload to Spotify first and then click over the RSS feed onto YouTube.
It will automatically go to the YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like a whole thing.
Yeah, and that's a new thing. I'm not sure how that's going to affect everything. YouTube might become their own like RSS feed hoster to distribute to other platforms. So you would only have to upload to YouTube, and then it would go to Spotify and everywhere else. And so it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be a podcast just because that shift is happening and no one quite knows what it is. I'm hoping that there's a whole ton of opportunity because as the algorithm like learns how to promote podcasts, there'll be opportunity for new creators to step ahead and get discovered.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about because exactly, I thought, it's like, how do you, okay, so my background, which we can go through in a bit, lots of it is always about like, you've got a piece of content, how do you promote it? And so I thought, I didn't really, like I say, I use YouTube as like my kind of like storage device. And then I thought Spotify would promote, but then I couldn't see anywhere within unless you pay, which I don't want to do right now. So how do you, so if you upload onto YouTube Shorts, it just becomes like part of a carousel. Like, is there any way of kind of boosting you like you can on LinkedIn, right? There's a gamifying sense of this.
Yeah, so YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world after Google. Like in terms of the number of searches people do, SEO is just as important on YouTube as it is for websites and everywhere else. And so tags and keyword written descriptions where people can find your video. Like if you look in the descriptions of ours, kind of towards the bottom, we put in the description because no one actually reads the description. Like very few people actually do. So at the bottom, we put how to start a business, how to start a podcast, how to make money online. And all of those are long tail keywords that someone searching, we hope this.
Yeah, it's like, it's like SEO basically. Yeah. You're so right. You're right. And at the moment, because I've been a bit shy, I haven't listed it publicly. Like it's unlisted. So I need to just tick the box. I need to go public.
Yeah, you do.
And then it'll start.
Here,
but when you first start doing something,
Here, I sent the link to one of the videos, and you could click on it and check the description and see what we're talking about.
Okay.
And
it's fun.
And the other part of that is there's the keywords, there's the tags, and then
it's at the bottom.
People trust what you've done.
Ooh,
right? So I mean, it's easy for.
Right, I will look at that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And so
I'm gonna.
Sorry. But probably the most important thing when it comes to optimizing stuff is your title and thumbnail, because that's what people are actually going to see. The description helps some, and there's a whole ton of other best practices like having chapters in the video. Like you can set timestamps for people to click through. YouTube really likes that because that tells YouTube can't watch the video And so it's trying to figure out what's this video about, who should I share it with? And so by giving it the timestamps, it's like, okay, I know it is about these topics because that's what the timestamps look like that.
And you could see that in our description as well. There's a header and it says chapters, and underneath those are all the chapters for the video. It's how it segments it. So when you're watching a YouTube video, you can hover over each chapter, if you will, and you can see what each area is about.
And so you do all of that when you upload it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You just put it in the description and it will. You put a time.
Yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it manually, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If only there was AI that could do it and segment it for us.
There
probably is.
I was going to say, you guys are going to laugh. I've got so many things open on my machine. I couldn't find you guys anymore. So yeah, anyway, I'm back. And I'll watch that later because otherwise it plays while you're talking. Okay, that's really useful. And so I was going to ask you one more question. Well, two more. One is, what's the biggest mistake you've made? You see, I'm switching around this interview. Do you like what we're doing here?
Okay, I mean, we made so many, but one that kind of comes out to me, this was more in the beginning. Just like making sure your audio is good. And
yes,
like what we try to do now is we try to kind of record a little bit while we're talking with the guests before we start actually recording to make sure the audio is okay. Because that's the biggest thing. Like you can't waste somebody's time twice. Like I don't know if you're having guests on or
yes, I have two at the same time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's my format.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe we'll have to hear more about that later. But
yeah, exactly. We'll do that. You asked me about that because it's quite experimental. And the other question. So that's your biggest mistake is the audio.
Wait, BJ, what do you think is our biggest mistake? I mean, we've made a ton, but that one kind of jumps out.
I have a couple. I mean, so the audio mistake, yes. The first real guest we had on, we forgot to do we were excited and nervous.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. Our first ever guest. We messed it up.
Well, technically, we did do a test run with our friend.
What did you forget to do?
We forgot to record BJ's audio.
Oh no!
None of anything I said got recorded. There was some issue with my mic, and it was just off.
Yeah.
And so nothing. So I had to go through at the end. I went through and I dubbed over where I'm supposed to be talking. I went back and I'm like, okay, I think I said this. Oh wait, that's too short. Let me slow down my talking because I had to get the exact right speed and also a vaguely correct question.
Yeah.
Oh.
Massive pain, and so we've learned our lesson.
And not only that, we had another guest come on later, and I forgot. The file got corrupted or something.
Yeah, that one sucked.
And so it was just a waste of 2 hours. And we had to respond and say, we're so sorry.
Yeah.
It was a fun conversation, but the guy really wanted to have the video, the recording of it, and we couldn't give it to him. So.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, it is what it is. That's what's that's just life. Either you have to do it again or, Yeah. So I was just going to say, one of mine's been, because I have these two people, that mine are really reflective. So what happens is they're really, really interesting, but they're not high energy, bite size, super kind of high impact. But the problem is, so I had a big debate with one of my friends about this, which is people like a high impact, bite size, super pithy podcast because it energizes and inspires. Yeah. On the other hand, if you're not careful, it means that you're never going to have people thinking, and you're never going to have more introverted, slower processing type people, because they aren't high impact, high energy. So if you're not careful, you only interview one kind of person, and it means that you never hear from people who are different, So that's interesting for me when I'm looking at the slower pace of some of mine, and I even thought about speeding people up, but then you think, no, this is real people, actually. So.
Yeah. I don't that's just the reality. There are some people that kind of more reserved. There are some people who are just out there, and and on different days you can be both, right? But and so I think with that you kind of need to help draw out the stuff. So like if they're super high energy, match that. Go back and bounce off them. If they're slow and kind of reserved, that's where you focus on like emphasis and like okay, what was that you just said there? That sounds really important. Say that again, like, and take it slow and bring the audience in to focus when you need to focus, and because I mean both are valuable. Like something that's deep
Exactly.
and slow. Like I mean, like if you hear a piano playing, the fast stuff gets you attention, but also the deep, slow, meaningful song will also just as easily get you attention. Maybe not on social media, but no, even on social media. I've watched both deep, slow, soulful piano and upbeat. So it's about just bringing out the best in both those sort of character traits.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it is sort of interesting because, I was saying I have two people. So I'm trying to get two people and I'm trying to host. So, and I'm trying to think as well. So it's quite interesting. But so, and then my other question was going to be, have you changed anything? So as a result of the things that didn't work, have you changed the format? Have you changed the style of guests? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So episodes 1 and 2 were just audio, and we just put a logo for the video. Which the logo has changed a couple times as well. And then after that, and initially we weren't interviewing guests, we were reading books.
We were doing books, yeah.
Since we were reading the books anyways, and we're like, okay, we'll just discuss these books. And it's almost as good as interviewing the author, right? They spent enough time working on this book where it is close to interviewing the author. And then around episode 9 or 10, a guy reached out and he's like, hey, I just published a book. I see your podcasts. He was starting to grow his, like personal brand and just published a book. And we were like, okay, come on. And so that's our first guest was an author. And so we stuck with the book thing.
Yeah.
And that was a ton of fun. And so we did a mix of books and guests for a while. And then eventually we now do largely guests. I do think we might do, if we run across a really, really amazing book, we might hop back to a book episode. But guests have been the most fun, I think. In terms of the format, we added 6 questions at the end for like the rapid fire round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so those part of the reason why is they make great shorts. It is
nice. You see, I'm loving your learning. I'm like, as in, this is brilliant. This is why you test and learn, right?
And so you'll get to see what the questions are at the end. There's 6 questions that we ask every single guest that comes on, and they usually elicit cool responses. I found it from another random interview that I found online. Some podcasts do it as well. I know Nathan Lotka does it. It's kind of, it's a thing that a fair amount of people do, which I think is cool. And it kind of helps us out too, because one of them is, what's your favorite book? So that kind of helps too.
Wow, I love reading, but I don't read. Anyway, okay, well, don't tell me, because I've got to be. So my last question. Now I've just thought of it. It's not on my list of questions. So you sent me a note saying, "Do you want to be on the podcast?" Yeah. Why have you got some kind of search on Entrepreneur or something, and I popped up, or how did you find me?
Let me think about how
be honest. I love honest.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think so. What I generally do to find people is I just look up like entrepreneur guest speakers, because what LinkedIn does is they're kind of annoying about it. Like you have to pay to use all the cool search tools. Like if I search like entrepreneur or whatever in this city or something, like if you narrow the search down or something, it, a thing pops up and it's like, hey, buy LinkedIn Premium or whatever. And so you can't really use the LinkedIn tools as much. So what I do is I kind of just go and search like entrepreneur guest panel or something like that. And it'll give me a bunch of lists of entrepreneurs. And so I'll send connections to
hundreds of notes to everybody.
Not hundreds, but probably dozens.
No, good for you. Good for
And
you.
then also when you're on like an entrepreneur's profile, it'll have recommendations to the right of it. And normally, next to an entrepreneur, there's a bunch more entrepreneurs. And so if you find one entrepreneur, that means there's like 5 connections next to it. And so,
So,
yeah, I'm interested. How do you get your guests on?
well, so at the moment, my whole point about doing podcasts is I showcase my experts. So,
Okay.
yeah, so somebody said to me, like, you should do something that shows the caliber of experts that you have as part of your team. And I was like,
Oh, that's
and then
smart.
after about, yeah, and I was like, oh, actually, this is a really good way of doing it. I'm going to theme these by interesting topics, and I'm going to showcase expertise. What was I going to say? So you said, oh yeah. But I've noticed people love to be asked on a podcast. So now I'm still doing my experts because I've got some super cool themes I'm going to do. But I'm actually going to start thinking, actually, who else would I like? So I'm going to start asking people that I think are like really interesting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've been surprised by like how easily it is to get guests. Like we were doing books simply because of like fear we don't want to ask guests. Like of course we would prefer an expert. Of course we would prefer to talk to Elon Musk or Mark Cuban or Jeff Bezos or someone crazy like that. But and so yeah, like most people do not get asked to be on a podcast. That's
No.
and like uh, I mean, there are people that like there's a AI lead at Microsoft who just I'm talking with. I'm trying to get him scheduled, but he's like massive. Like if you're in AI and like doing this all this research stuff, he's a massive name, and I'm talking to him. That's great. And there was a guy who did these LinkedIn courses on databases and stuff. And I took his courses and then I reached out and I'm like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And he gave me his phone number. And then because his contact was in my phone, it recommended adding him as a Snapchat friend. And it's like, this is someone that like I'm paying attention to is almost certainly a multimillionaire from their online business, educating a ton of people, and I'm talking to them.
So I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something. That's why I think what you two are doing is super interesting for your career prospects going forward. This is what I would do if I were you. I would think about all the kind of areas of business you're interested in doing in the future, and I would theme your cast around those so that you're basically establishing relationships with, you know, the top 20 CEOs or head of innovation or whatever in whatever sector you want to go in. And this is like your early warm-up. But at this point, you're interviewing them. I mean, that's what I love about it. Yeah. Well, I think it's really smart.
The AI guy at Microsoft is hiring right now. And so I am, I almost certainly am going to ask, hey, what do you look for when you're hiring people to be at the company? And like, so there is that aspect. And you'll get invited to this, but we have a LinkedIn group with all our previous guests.
Yeah.
As a way of like providing value to them for coming on, because like the people they're currently like they're all working their careers and building this stuff, and then maybe one day certainly one day we're going to interview Mark Cuban and Gary Vee and all these other important figures, and they're hopefully going to agree to join that group as well, and then that will be really cool to have a direct connection with those people.
Yeah, we're still trying to find a way to provide value with that group because we don't want it to be spammy, you know. But we also want to form some kind of community with all the people that have come on our podcast. And so we're still kind of trying to figure out what to do exactly. And I think right now we're just waiting to get more people. So it's not right now it's just like 15 guests that are on it right now. So
and like I don't think anything we've done for first episodes has been like particularly like saying something that's never been said before, right? I don't think we're like it's fun. We enjoy talking about it, and I think we get good insights for us personally, and other people can appreciate it. But in terms of being like unique and providing value that people can't get elsewhere, I think we're still working on that. And part of that is this discussion of failure that we want to start doing, because
yeah, I loved that. I loved that because I think that's honestly, it's a huge thing for anybody who wants to go into their own business. Is you've got to be. That's why I'm saying to you, this whole kind of test and learn is actually really hard, and most people don't do it. So
yeah, and like most people don't do it. I think largely because of fear and judgment. Like they only see other people succeeding. They only see the social media people celebrating all their wins and going to all these amazing places, or
humble to be nominated Woman of the Year type thing.
Yeah. I know some people who like say that the absolute worst thing they can do for their mental health is look at one of their peers' LinkedIn pages, because that's where you put all your massive accomplishments, and if you don't feel like you have those, that it doesn't feel great, and so
yeah. My business partner's the same. She hates LinkedIn for that reason, and I'm like, yeah, but the problem is it is the biggest social network for business. So
exactly, that's the hard
you
part
kind of
about
have
it.
to engage, right? You know, she can't bear it. So anyway, should we get stuck in? Because I'm aware I've got a bit of a hard stop with my. I've got to go into my other role, which is being a mum and cooking supper at some point. So.
Yeah. So the one other thing that I might recommend is if you're looking to reach out to other people for your podcast beyond your group, you might try doing yourself, one of your experts, one of your colleagues, and then a potential client that.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. We're on the same page here.
Don't worry, it's totally there. Exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be so overt about it, so that the next person I ask is like, oh my god, I'm a potential client. But yes, that's exactly right.
Definitely don't try to like sell them on the podcast, but establish that connection, talk with them, and then when they realize, oh, you can solve all my problems, here's my money.
Exactly. You got it, BJ. That is totally phase 2.
Excellent. Yeah.